Hello, everyone. This is Sherry with Pearl at the mailbox, and we're continuing our January human trafficking awareness. Women that are on the grassroots making a big difference in this fight to protect our kids. And I am so honored to introduce you to Jessica Knight with Fire Revolution. This woman has fire in her soul and under her feet, and she has got a lot to share. So, Jessica, please just introduce yourself, share about fire, and where God's directing you to go.
Okay. I just want to share too. Sherry's amazing. She's one of my favorite people. And so if we go long, it's because we have a connection. I love her. Jessica and I am the executive director for an organization called Fire Revolution Freedom Center. And we also have an Advocacy for Women, Inc. as part of that, where the acronym FIRE stands for Freedom is for Everyone. And we advocate against the violence, exploitation, and trafficking of women and teens. We have multiple programs. Our primary focus is on our survivor community. We have I think there's about 60 altogether across the United States. There's 40 here in Phoenix. Domestic violence, trafficking experience, any type of exploitation. We connect primarily, to assist in our healing journey, but also I want to say too to prevent being lured, any type of stronghold or fix that might be there still from the trauma that just makes us vulnerable to be recruited back in. Or I want to say 100% of our community has some type of addiction. They're in addiction recovery, including myself. So just being there for one another. We do events. We also do outreach. We do something with Rescue America. They call the call centers. And then we also do a strip club outreach, as well as there's another survivor up in North Phoenix, and sometimes we'll do a street outreach with her. There's a survivor here in the East Valley that wants to do a street outreach. So we're working on getting that started in 2025. But it's accountability, I want to say, within trauma. When you're on your healing journey, it's accountability, it's connection, it's love, it's gatherings, it's just all sorts of things where that piece of darkness, that piece that you feel may have been stolen from you, you can become a whole person once again. And within that, if another survivor or victim is wanting to exit out, we'll assist them. And again, just bringing awareness primarily that human trafficking is real here. Domestic human trafficking is real here in the United States. I want to say of the survivors within our community, they're all U.S. citizens.
Mm-hmm.
I think the only one that isn't is my mom, who was trafficked in the Philippines, but she's a naturalized citizen now. So it's just bringing awareness that of the darkness surrounding human trafficking, protecting our children, our young ones, our communities, as well as is just helping other survivors in their healing journey. So that's really what FIRE is about. I know that, just a little backstory, my mom is a traffic survivor. She was trafficked as a teen in the Philippines, and her vulnerabilities became my vulnerabilities. I was recruited and groomed as an adult. I was in my late 30s when it happened, so I feel like the social issue, there's no real rhyme or reason as to who is vulnerable. Everyone is vulnerable to recruit. It doesn't matter your age, your social economic situation. There are more certain populations that are more vulnerable than others, but everyone, in my opinion, is vulnerable. And I always said, like, if my mom had a group of amazing ladies when she was in her early stages of recovery, would that have made a difference? Would it have prevented some of the abuse that I went through, and even the grooming and recruiting, that experience that I went through? And I just don't want anybody, you and I have both talked about this, I don't want anyone to have that experience. And if I can at least save one person,
Yes,
it would have been worth it. So
I know. So you do so much, and one, I wonder how in the world you have time to do everything that you do.
it's totally God.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so When and how did you start fire?
So I just, again, backstory leading up to fire. I was decided, I was just in a really bad place in my life. I had just separated from my third husband, going through another divorce. But we were in church. This time we were in church, and I needed to go through healing myself. I struggled doing the salvation prayer, praying with somebody, like raising my hands in worship in the church. I didn't feel real. I felt wore a mask when I went to church. I share with people my first 7 years in the church. I tried to be who the church wanted me to be,
Mm-hmm.
and that didn't work. And then, like, the next after that, um, when I had this experience with God, I became who He wanted me to be. I started to realize that, well, it's really about how He designed me, how He built me, and just having those multiple conversations. So I wanted to become a pastor. It was one of my three things as a kid. I wanted to either work in a bank, um, heal depression, or become a pastor. And I ended up in a chaplaincy program. I know.
I'm
Ended
not
up in
sure
a
where the bank
chaplaincy
one
program,
came from.
which it was the best thing for me, because understanding the difference between a pastor and a chaplain. And in that chaplaincy program is where my greatest healing came from. It, we just did the podcast about waking up the American church. And I realized after the podcast, I'm like, well, the church really saved my life. My kids will tell you the person that I used to be and the person I am today are two different people, and they like this person. So in the chaplaincy program, I wanted to go and serve. I wanted to do the natural disasters. I wanted to help the veterans. And then I also wanted to be like a chaplain in the care centers. I wanted to do services in the care centers with the elderly, because I really like the elderly. And during my internship, um, it's all about finding your anointing, and finding out what God has called you to serve within the kingdom of God. And at the time, I was doing my internship at the Phoenix Dream Center
Mm-hmm.
in their Where Hope Lives. Back then, it was called the Rescue Project, and then later it changed. But I was there in the very beginning
That's amazing.
when it started, and we realized as I was working with the ladies that I just had a gift. I had a gift to be able to talk to them, to be able to share, to connect.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started, because I work in a bank. That's what I do full time. That's what pays the bills. And then I do all of my volunteer work with fire
Mm-hmm.
in the evenings, on the weekends, all that kind of stuff. So I taught budgeting and goal setting for about 5 years, constantly, because when a young woman exits out of a situation, any type of exploitation, they really don't understand credit or checking accounts or how to save money. So at the time, I had about 20 years experience in the financial institution. So I put a curriculum together, and that's where I started. And then people started to hear my story and what I went through. The executive director, Pastor Brian, still invited me to become the outreach director. So we started doing street outreach, and we had such huge success with that. He's like, why don't you take over the hotline? And so I ran a hotline. So I did exit recovery. So the ladies that would call on the hotline, we would rescue. We did street outreach. We did strip club outreach. And then I also ran the hotline as well. And then I have one mentee. I would usually keep one lady I would mentor within the program, just so that I could always stay connected as well. So I did that for about 2 years. In the Super Bowl in 2015 was coming to Phoenix. So there was a lot of, we were working with the FBI and Homeland Security. We were doing all these things because the Super Bowl was coming to Phoenix. And what can we do to help out, help law enforcement? And I decided to build an underground railroad during the Super Bowl, connect all the dream centers that had a human trafficking program. We were going to recover. And it was a huge success. The operation, we did 33 outreaches in 10 days. I think we recovered about 65 total, 60 adults, and then there were about 15 kids. within the whole operation. And then I was so exhausted at the end. And then at the end, all the bureaucratic stuff came out, and it hurt me. That's one of my biggest traumas, is what happened there. And I wanted to retire because my dad also passed away during this time as well. And I wanted originally to quit. And my dad's dying wish was, "You're so good at this. You're so good at this. Please don't quit." And originally I did. I retired from the Dream Center. I didn't want to have anything to human trafficking. I wanted to go back to what I originally wanted to do. And one of the interns in the chaplaincy program had a felony, so she really didn't have a way to serve to get her chaplain certificate. And she's also a survivor of sexual violence, domestic violence, exploitation, all this kind of stuff. And that's really kind of where fire started from. I had this Underground Railroad. We came up with the name Freedom is for Everyone. And I believe, like, for me, my mom kind of still struggles with her identity with Christ. And I believe that Jesus died for everybody. But I also believe that no one should be a slave. As humans, we should experience this life, have choices. And so learning the laws and in the United States and how it's different from the outside, and even like the volunteer work that I did at the Dream Center, even though it was incredibly rewarding, there was still a lot of limitations.
Yes.
And what I was finding was, when women finished the program, they were very vulnerable to be recruited back in. Me being one of them, because I was also dealing with a trafficker who was continually reaching out to me. And being an adult, there's different laws. There aren't laws for recruiting. Like, it's not illegal to recruit an adult. As an adult, we have to stand up for ourselves. I think kids, minors, it's a little bit different. So
because it's like this magic thing. You turn 18 and all of a sudden, it's just like, okay, you're agreeing to what's happening to you no matter what.
Right. And I don't think people really know that dark side of grooming, which you and I have talked about. And even after the recruitment and the grooming, when you share you don't want to have any part of this particular trafficker continued to search for me and find me and reach out to me for 9 years. And I went to law enforcement and asked for help. And they, I'm an adult. They basically told me, you have to take care of it. And then one time it got really, really bad. And then, like, victim services helped me. We were going to put a restraining order on him. Mm-hmm. We were building a case. We were trying to get him to threaten me again. I was like, I barely survived the first time. You want me to do this again? Mm-hmm. And just, I want to say, just living that experience, mm-hmm. where now they think I had a mild heart attack from the experience. I had something happen. I got sick and ended up in the hospital. Okay. And years later, they think I had and that's just to show you the pressure. Yeah, the pressure that any victim who wants to get out, who's dealing with a trafficker, who's threatening her family. And I'm like, how do you navigate through something like this?
People think that's just in the movies, That
yes, and it's not. Life. It's real. Right. And again, just hearing about, just within the fire community, about other survivors that may come in contact with other victims who are trying to get out, and then we end up losing them somewhere to the trafficker again, because he's continuing to lure her back in. And so they say it takes a village, and I want to say it really, really does. And the women that I've helped across the nation, one of the most important things is to get connected to a community, whether it's law enforcement, some type of Celebrate Recovery, Young Life is another one, your church, like somebody who cares about you, that if you disappeared, somebody would call the police. And I've just been very fortunate in that, because there was a point where I thought I was going to die. I thought I was going to get kidnapped. This is it. I'm done. I had to share with my family.
9 years.
And law enforcement couldn't do anything. They just told me, well, you might want to take a self-defense class.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up in...
years?
Hmm?
Why did he pursue you for 9 years?
We don't know. We really don't know. It's just within the last 4 years that he stopped. So
Is he still alive?
yes, yes,
Okay.
I have access to his social medias. He keeps his social medias public, so it's probably not healthy. I've been told by many trauma docs don't do that, but I want to know, just as
Yeah.
because he's alive. He law enforcement, like there was a point I feel as a victim. It took me years to get to a point where I felt I was a victim of circumstance,
Hmm.
and that finally like just kind of receiving that in, and then just getting really angry again, um, that law enforcement couldn't do anything, and just having peace that that's just part of my healing journey, is where my faith is very important to me. I believe God has protected me and my family
Right.
for the last, it's been 12 years since the incident happened. And they couldn't arrest him again because he's very smart. He did always tell me when we were together that he didn't deal with minors because minors will get you in prison. So
Yeah.
they're really smart. That's one thing that I've learned. I do know where he pretty much is at all times, just to keep myself safe. I try to keep a low profile because I am still at risk. My family is still in danger at some points, because we don't know how this particular ring that he's a part of would retaliate. And the fact that they're still operational. But I know that law enforcement, because I've worked with law enforcement to try to get him arrested, and um, things did happen. Like there are people in his ring that got arrested, which probably upset him even more. But we
Mm.
don't know. Like I've talked with my girlfriends, and I'm older. Like, why would you continue to pursue someone like me? That's just the reality.
Yeah.
So I do everything in my power to make sure that I'm prepared. I have my green belt in Krav Maga. I know how to use a firearm, just different
Right.
things like that. But at the same time, it's being smart on my end as well,
Right.
to do what I feel God has called me to do. But at the same time, I call it being in ninja mode.
Always. Yeah, but that's exhausting when you have to always be in that mode. It's just physically and mentally exhausting.
And I want to say, like, I have a lot of fear. Something I do just for my self care is, I don't know if you know who Dr. Caroline Leaf is. I've followed her for about 15 years. I listened to her podcast. I've read her books. I tried her neurocycle app, and like there's something in there where she's like, you're supposed to think about your future. Because I've been single since the incident happened, and I really do. I've realized that I have so much fear from that
Yeah.
experience, that I'm just afraid to go into a relationship because I don't know what would happen.
I can
And
understand.
it's not the you know the person that I would be with. I feel like the person, my partner, would be very loving. It's just what would this particular trafficker do? Because just some of the things that he said, some of the things that have happened to other women, those kinds of things, especially with pursuing me for 9 years. Anyway, these are just me, my vulnerabilities. I'm sharing with people stuff that I go through,
Right.
where that's where my passion comes from. That's the fire that you see.
Right.
I don't want anyone to go through what you went through, what my mom went through, um, what I went through. And there's no way that my kids will ever experience what I have gone through. And I will
I,
fight. And again, the opportunities to bring awareness in the community. But I just feel that our community, just in general, doesn't really sympathize with victims. And that's where my peace comes from. Okay, if this is a gift in some way, I can turn it around, right? Romans 8:28. It happened, it's free will. And what can I do to make somebody else just
right.
feel a little, connected?
Right. Right. No, I think, well, one, everybody's pretty much got blinders on in the United States about trafficking in general. And then, so if you can't get people to really understand that there's trafficking occurring, then how are they even going to understand the grooming process?
Yes.
And then all that happens after you get rescued or you get out, or you're still trying to fight. You're still trying to fight for your freedom in many
Yes.
ways, because he is still harassing you and in trying to intimidate you, which is not okay, dude. Just, leave her alone. But yet at the same time, you're not letting that stop you. You're still going out there and doing these different missions. I call them missions, that you're going to these outreaches with the strip clubs and all of the survivors that you just love on. And I appreciate that so much, what you do, that you can be there in a moment with a survivor and relate to them because of what you've gone through. And like personally, like I myself, I can't take that on, but you can. And so you are in a that's that selfless love person you are. I mean, I've seen you with the girls that you work with, and I am like, you're like a mama to all of them.
I'm the big
And
sister. Because
yeah,
I'm the oldest, so I'm the big sister. It's just natural.
yeah, and I see how they look up to you, and you're a sense of security, a source of security for them in a way. And that, I think that they probably, if they ever felt the pull to go back in, they would say, "Hey, I'm really struggling with this."
hmm
That's so cool. Now,
Yeah,
how
many.
does a survivor find you? How do they find your organization? How do they connect with
It's
you?
on. It's totally God. It is totally God. Um, just just some of the stories. I'm trying to think. So one of them. So we hand out bracelets. The survivors get together and we make the bracelets, which you saw when
Mm-hmm.
you came to one of our events. We have a group of sorority sisters that makes them. We have a church youth group that makes them.
Oh, cool.
Um, so and then we hand them out, and the ladies in the clubs love them. And the whole idea, I should have grabbed one. We have an outreach card, and on the outreach card, it refers them to our hotline number and a website. Our website, and at the website, thefirerevolution.com, is it's for them. There's, if you're in our city, these are the resources that you can connect with. If you're not in our city, you're abroad, these are resources you can connect to at a national level. And then there's other things, like if they're not even worried about being trafficked, there's trauma informed care. I have podcasts on there from survivors of domestic violence, survivors of human trafficking, and just like another little kind of area, so that they know that they're loved and they're cared about.
Right.
But the whole concept is to give them this card, so that if they need something, they can reach out to us. And you can't just walk into a club and say, "Hey, can you hand these cards out to your dancers?" So we go in and we hand out the bracelets. We hand
Mm-hmm.
out little gifts. We get a lot of stuff from Timu. People donate. It doesn't cost a lot to do it, but we hand out about 300 to 400 gifts a month.
Wow.
And yes, and so one of the survivors, um, we don't know how she got the bracelets. The story is still kind of fuzzy. I don't know if she was a dancer, but she
Mm-hmm.
said her friend, who is a dancer, gave her the bracelet with a card. And
Oh.
she was really struggling. She was dealing with an abusive boyfriend who we think was a trafficker, because within the dynamics of trafficking, sometimes a trafficker will have a wife, a girlfriend, and then a hoe. So they
Mm-hmm.
won't traffic the wife or the girlfriend. So we think that she was maybe the girlfriend, and then he had women that because he just brutally abused her, physically and mentally. And um he was being very aggressive in trying to find her and reconnect with her. She was going through therapy. She actually left the state, and then something happened and she came back and she looked for us. So now she's part of our group, and she reaches out every now and again when she needs something. She's in church as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe that, and I pray. I actually pray, Lord, whatever those divine connections that they are, connect them with us. We've had the city of Mesa Victim Services refer ladies to us. The survivors will invite other ladies, and then I want to say other churches too. It's all literally. I'm not joking, Sherry. It's all word of mouth. It is all word of mouth.
That's amazing.
Somebody will say something to somebody, and they're like, "Oh, there's this person that I want you to introduce." One of our first recoveries when I started Fire in 2015, it was a dad in New York, and uh, his daughter was here in Phoenix being trafficked, and they'd been trying to get her out.
Mm.
And so he said something to somebody here in Phoenix, and somebody says, "You know what? There's somebody that I need you to meet." And so we got her out. We sent her back to Boston, and she's been free for 10 years. She's
How
got
did
a
you
couple
get her
more.
out?
That wasn't very smart of me.
Did you just go and
I
get her?
put a team together. It was not I have trained teams now, but again, this is when Fire first started, and I didn't have connections with the Dream
Yeah.
Center. So it was just me, another survivor, and a neighbor, and she was at a hotel next to a QT. So we just asked her to come over, and that was, again, I won't ever do that again. It was not a smart move, but it was just in the moment because her trafficker went to visit family somewhere in Phoenix, which is why they were in Phoenix.
Oh.
And she was ready. She's like, "Let's go, let's get out." And a tree happened to fall on his car. So he got stuck in
That's
that
God.
city with his family, right? And so she was with me for about 3 weeks before we got her home. And
Oh,
that's just like, these are the experiences that I've had with God. Like, if it's
yes.
really
The
an
tree.
assignment with God, anyone, ladies, if you're out there and you've been praying and asking for help, God will send it. Like, He will send me. He sends somebody to you. So, just different experiences like that. I just think it's divine appointment. Even like within Celebrate Recovery, somebody in Celebrate Recovery will have heard of Fire and say, "Hey, you need to call this hotline," and
Mm-hmm.
all those different kinds of things. So it's literally word of mouth.
That's crazy. Now talk about this hotline that you have.
So we have a hotline. Again, if you go to thefirerevolution.com,
Mhm.
we don't get very many calls on it. I joke with people because the most calls we get are usually solicitation calls, and so I just tell them, remove us from your list or whatever. But every now and again, we will get somebody that you can text or you can call, and I usually just sit and I listen. Um, Running the hotline with the Phoenix Dream Center, um, we would get about 50 calls a week. And I had an amazing team. This was back when I was connected with the chaplaincy program. So it was just a bunch of chaplain interns and volunteers. We would take shifts running the hotline. And I'm like, there is literally nothing that you can share with me that I haven't heard or that would shock me,
Right.
just because of, doing this for the last 15 years. And so our hotline, it's just me. You can text, you can go to the website, and if you call or text, you'll get a response from me.
Is this for somebody that's wanting to get out? Or
Yes, wanting to get out,
okay.
needs resources, wants prayer.
Okay.
Usually, what I have found in the recoveries I've done, because in the beginning, women would want out, and they literally just kind of wanted a place to stay overnight and an excuse to kind of recover from their trafficker, but then they would leave the next day.
Right.
So in my experience, oh gosh, this includes the Dream Center. In the last 15 years, I've probably done about 500 recoveries. When somebody calls the hotline, we put an action plan together. Something that I've learned is to force choices. So one of the things we ask is, okay, when you exit out, what does that look like? What do you want to focus on? You want to focus on a job, um, uh, uh, addiction recovery, domestic violence, or do you actually want to work on the trafficking piece? Because I worked on my trafficking story, and it was really, really hard. So I don't recommend that, but if that's what you want to work on, then there's programs out there for you for that. And so based on that information, They generally pick one of the four, and then we'll give them three different entities. So let's just say addiction recovery, we'll give them Community Bridges, TLC, Streets of Joy,
Mm-hmm.
and based on what they want to do when they're out, they'll pick. And of those three that they pick, then they get accepted into this program. Usually, once they get accepted in a program, we won't hear about it. So we just say, when you're out, just look us up. Here's our card. Keep our card. I think I've had one or two. I think there's one or two in our community that that we helped get into a program, and they stayed with us afterwards. I also do a lot of stuff with the youth.
Mm-hmm.
I go into Adobe Mountain, just doing their spiritual retreats, building a connection. I call it being a PACE. So if an individual has experienced ACE, which is adverse childhood experience, being a
Like
PACE,
those tests.
yeah, I will say that, in the very beginning, which was in the chaplaincy program, the chaplain students were praying for me. I didn't realize how bad I was back then, but they were praying and it worked. But I had PACEs, and those PACEs, so positive, I think it's positive attributes or positive something, experiences, child experiences, literally reverses ACEs. And so I'm a living testimony of that, of people that have come in my life and have been a PACE, and I pay it forward by being a PACE to our youth.
Right.
And just, trying to stop it, trying to stop the recruitment,
Right.
trying to stop the vulnerability. Yeah.
And then with social media, it's made it even worse.
Yes.
Because it always used to be face-to-face recruitment. That's how I was recruited. And now it's like that silent stalker that's just there roaming online, just waiting for the right kid to say the right thing. And then they just
Yes.
zoom in on it. But how, well, with the parents, let's say, how naive are parents when it comes to grooming and trafficking of children?
It's sad. It's very, very sad that parents unfortunately don't have a clue. And I've talked to many, many parents. They're like, "What can I do? What do I watch for?" And I'm like, make sure you stay connected. Take your child out and just listen. Take them to McDonald's and just listen. Build a connection. Parents are so disconnected from their kids. They think it's just rebellion. And it's not rebellion, it's pain. Even just within my family, because of what happened to me, we're all like, our spidey senses are all very alert. And
Right.
I would say, parents, if you feel disconnected to your child, you need to reconnect in some way. If you see the lavish things, all of a sudden they're getting money from somewhere. And I don't want to say it's just parents. It could be foster care parents as well.
It could be grandparents.
Yes, just acting very isolated. They don't want to talk to you. I want to empower you as a parent. Take that power back.
It's so weird though, because those are always things that people are told to look out for. But in my case, I was already that way to begin with as a child. So
I see, and I always think about what I would have done different with you.
yeah.
What would I have done if I was Sherry's
I was
parent?
never this outgoing, bubbly kid. I was a very isolated kid, and I isolated myself. So that's.
But I think as parents, and you know this because you're a parent, you know when something's off with your child.
You do.
Yes, and like my dad knew something was off with me.
Right.
And I mean, I never told him. My mom literally just found out about 2 months ago. Why? She's like, "Why do you like to fight so much?" I'm like, "Well, there's a convicted trafficker out there that still thinks I'm his property."
Your mom didn't know?
No,
Wow.
We both cried. Yeah, we sat down, we talked about it, and then we cried. Because
That's
she had gone through something very, very similar. So, yeah.
It really breaks my heart when people think that they have the right to own and sell another person. And I think it's just, well, it's so hard for others that live a normal life, the 9 to 5, nothing crazy ever happens, for them to comprehend that this is happening
Yes.
in our country, not
Yes.
talking about somewhere else where all of the movies focus, but in our country. And it takes a long time, for I think, for people to wake up to the fact that this is happening. And I know it's
Mm-hmm.
really hard for people to wake up, and that's why the traffickers are just, they're having free reign. And the word trafficker, that's such a palatable word.
Yes.
It's a slave owner. That's
It
really
is.
what it
Yes.
is. He's
It
selling
is.
another person.
Yes.
And it's, we got to get back to the roots of what it really is. But
Yes.
I love that you are in this fight even while you still have somebody messing with you. Could you charge him for stalking?
We can, like, I'm to the point where if he, he threatens me again, like, I'm a lot smarter. This person is very hard to recruit. Back then, and he knew, like, back then, I was very vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
I was incredibly naive. I do share that through the grooming process, he literally killed that person that I used to be. And
Right.
I didn't know how to move forward. I did want to commit suicide for a long time, but I held it together long enough to protect my children. And I'm happy. I'm happy with the person that I've become. I finally have peace with everything that happened. And so, I mean, it's hard to, I feel like a lot of survivors relate to that as well, that, um, that person, like, just doesn't exist. Like, the one that I was telling you about that's part of our community, she's like, I wish I could be the person I was before the trauma. And I
Yeah.
was like, sweetie,
That
that
person's
person
gone.
is gone.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to find a place where you're happy and become who you want to be, or the person that you need. And
And that's hard
um
to do. That's really,
yes.
like I tell everybody, it took me 20 years to kind of figure out who I was.
Mhm.
And because most traffickers controlled every aspect of your life. So I had to learn
Yes.
even to say what kind of candy bar I liked, you know, what was the temperature of a shower, these
Mhm.
simple, simple things, because when every aspect is controlled, it's so that's hard to
Yes.
first of all even believe that you have the right to make a choice. So I
Yes.
feel for those young survivors that have just come out, or new survivors. But there's a whole beautiful path ahead of them, and there's so much that they can do. And
Yes.
we always talk about how what happened never defines who you are. You can take control of that and turn it
Yes.
into something good, which I love. And so on the self-defense side, I love what you did as a way to protect yourself. Talk about that.
As far as Krav Maga,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
you're
it's
kicking some butt, girl.
yeah, it's not easy. I will tell you this. I'm very fortunate that I want to say my spiritual dad had his black belt in Taekwondo. He got it while he was in Korea.
Awesome.
That's Dr. Sang Hoon Yu. And so, he knew, and he gave me a lot of tools to keep going. And I want to say, again, I believe that, see, this is going to make me cry, because I told God, we were in the pandemic. I was at one dojo and it was very triggering. And so I quit. And then I told the Lord, like, I really need this. And he led me to the dojo that I am at now. It's Next Level um, Martial Arts and Fitness. It's in Gilbert, if you look it up.
Okay.
And just, Grandmaster Edmondson is just very comforting. Some of you may know him as Karate Joe. He actually taught self-defense on Channel 3 when there was a self-defense segment.
Mm-hmm.
And he did it, I think he did it for 3 years is what he said. And then my favorite coach who helps me just overcome the triggers. Even the ladies, there's a women's empowerment team there, and they're incredibly encouraging. So it's another community. For me, it's just another community, and we work through my triggers and understanding them. And Dr. Caroline Leaf talks about the only way to really heal from the trauma is you have to face it. And so to face something like that, I'm not joking. I just, I literally freeze sometimes, and they'll talk me to it. And then again, Grandmaster Edmondson lets, the other coaches work with me. And it's literally the only way that I've been able to get through it. And I learned through it, but I haven't given up. It's going to be 5 years in May, and I haven't given up. I continue to go. I show up. We're doing a women's self-defense free workshop on January 11th, which is Human Trafficking Awareness Day. And I'm loved on in that community, and they're very understanding. And again, it's my part. Like, my part is to not give up, to keep working at it. I do want my black belt. I feel like if I'm going to continue to assist women and teens stand up to the traffickers, I might want a black belt to be able to do that. But again, it's my personal goal, just to say that I did it, and it's helped me overcome so many of my fears. I had that fear of abduction, and I share with the Krav Maga community. We did this home invasion workshop, and this is a bit extreme, but Grandmaster Edmondson and my favorite coach, they put zip ties on me, and they taught me how to break free of those zip ties. And it was, to me, I was bawling. They had to take me outside. I was bawling so hard, but they taught me to do it, and I felt so good.
You did it.
I did it.
Oh, that would
and
be so triggering.
I woke up the next morning, and that fear of being abduction was gone. And I just went, oh, okay, well, if I am abducted, I could probably, it would take me a bit to figure it out, but I could probably get free somehow. So yeah. And then just being able to do certain moves, being able to kick, and, and for some reason, like, I guess I'm just that approachable kind of person. And I think any of our female coaches, if you meet them, just the stuff that goes through our head, that we're always situationally aware of our surroundings and what would we do if we got into certain situations. And that is something all of our advocates, there's 4 advocates that do the strip club outreach, and they've all done the self-defense class just so they know if something happens while we're in the clubs, they can get free as well. It's just basic.
Amazing.
Yes. So I just feel our dojo is just a little bit different. And it's just Master Edmondson. He's really good. He has other affiliates across the nation. So just call him, reach out.
I've talked to other survivors who have gone through some of the training like you, and they quit because their what is it, grandmaster, their teacher, just told them that's mind over matter, get over it. And you can't say that to somebody that's gone through the trauma like we have, because it's embedded in us.
Yes. And all the coaches, they watch me, they're mindful of me. And like Dr. Yu, he's like, one of the things you can do is just go outside. Just go outside and walk around for a couple minutes and come back. And he said, and my thing is, I think of the accountability to Dr. Yu, in that, don't quit. Because he's like, survivors always quit. Don't quit.
Yeah.
And so he's like, do this, just take a break. Coach Rob he'll do box breathing with me, and we're just, he'll have certain students work with me. So it's just being mindful of it. And when we teach our women's self-defense workshop, it's very trauma-informed care. One of the things, there's also a jiu-jitsu piece of it, and Hoyler Gracie, I've taken a couple of his workshops, and he's like, you touch your partner, and he's like, friend, you're my friend. And so we say that to each other in the dojo as well. And I think it goes back to who the Grand Master is and their compassion
Yeah.
on their, their students. And, we always talk about, he's like, every single one of your survivors should be in my class. And I'm like, I agree.
Right.
But, some people aren't ready to confront those memories, and they don't understand the trauma, the triggers that are going through the body, because you have to listen to your body. I listen to my body, and
Right. Well, because
and
a lot of times we had to fight for
yes,
ourselves in many ways. And so I can totally visualize you're in there like punching or whatever you're
yes,
doing and going back to these moments of where you're in a situation like trying to fight off, a buyer or something, and I
a wrist grab, a hair pull. I
Mhm.
mean, I had an issue with bear hugs. Oh, any type of hugs, because that's
Oh
what
yeah.
this particular trafficker would do to me, and the sensation, my body would literally
Ugh.
just freak out.
Oh,
So yeah, yes, exactly,
so
exactly.
people, when you're listening to this, um, survivors have gone through a lot, but we're also very strong and overcome a lot. And
Yes.
so I love what you have done to empower yourself to feel, more comfortable just being out there and about. So, what do you think's in the future for fire?
My hope is I've been wanting to build, and I know that's a need. So there is a need, and you know this. There's a need for peer support mentors. So survivor
Yes,
mentor, peer to peer.
yes,
And there isn't one.
no,
So I've been trying to apply for a grant, or there's the Atlas Project. I don't know if you've heard of the Atlas Project. I want to be part of the Atlas Project, which is about sustainability, because I literally just want to tell our government, literally, the only reason I want to be part of this program is to tell the government that our survivors who have been out for many years need a mentor, and
yeah,
they need work. They need to be able to give back. And I want Dr. Yu to train this mentor team. And I tried to do it with one other entity, and it fell apart. They just weren't ready. And now another opportunity has presented itself with a group home of the youth.
hmm,
So I'm hoping that, once we get that going, just again being a pace, so teaching survivors that are in the fire community to be a pace to a youth.
right.
We're going to do this through bracelet making. And then so I'm hoping to be part of that program so that Dr. Yu can train us, and so fire can have its own peer mentor survivor program. That's what I want to do in
I
2025.
I love that. I love that. It seems like the survivors are shut out in so many different ways, and it's these big, giant organizations that are in this fight that seem to control everything, but yet the ones that actually have experienced it, our voices are often stifled. And
Mm-hmm.
I know you and I are both out there to change that. And I love
Yes.
that too. But the problem that I found with mentoring is that you have to go to a certain organization, then you have to go through their training process. And so it'd be great if you have your own and they come to
Mm-hmm.
you somehow. How would you have them find you?
How would I have the organizations find me?
Well, no, let's say so you start a peer to peer program. Would you work with a certain organization, like a certain group home, or and I guess I'm just talking out loud, trying to
Yeah.
visualize how you would do that.
What I would want to do, let's just say we're 3 months into the new year, and I've gotten my team together, this team of survivors, and we have the funding so the Dr. You can train us. And what I would want to do then is be able to go to either, I would want to go into like group homes, right? Either adult or youth,
Uh huh.
that have, survivors of human trafficking or domestic violence. And I would want the survivors to, be a pace a peer support in though at that level, right?
Okay.
Because one of the criterias in order to be like a survivor advocate with fire is ministry is like number 5. Volunteer is number 5 on your priority list. Your number 1 priority is your faith, whatever that is, keeping, because you can't pour from an empty cup. And unfortunately, because of the dark trauma that survivors have been through, it's very draining. So they need to know, they have to have structure. So a survivor advocate would have to have structure, taking care of her faith, her self-care,
Mm-hmm.
her whatever type of domestic partner she has, whether she's married or not, her kids and her family, and then her job, as well as then ministry, right? So if I put a pool together and we do these events, I honestly, I want to mirror what Adobe Mountain does as well with their mentors. They only require, I think, 2 hours a month. I know it needs more, but just because everyone is busy, I would kind of want the same thing here. And even with the way that I would want to structure it, depending upon how deep a survivor advocate would want to go. But I just want to make sure that she's taking care of herself and not being like a peer support advocate would just be one piece of a new survivor's journey. So does that make sense?
So needed, Jessica.
Yes.
So needed.
Yes.
So needed.
And it would kind of be like, like a sponsor is in Alcohol Anonymous or in Celebrate Recovery. You're available a lot through text. You could be there for the person, but sometimes a victim or a survivor, they're so raw in their beginning that I want to prevent trauma bonding and manipulation and all this kind of stuff. So how do you protect the survivor who just wants to give back, but also help the survivor that's on her healing journey?
I know, it's like, how do you bring that together?
Yeah.
One other thing you said real quickly, and I know you speak of dark trauma all the time. Can you explain what that is?
Okay. This is actually part of just the trauma-informed community. So I'm a member in the Weave and Cleave community here in Phoenix. I know there's many, different trauma-informed communities throughout the nation. Dr. Yu travels all over the nation and kind of teaches the model. And so within the trauma-informed model, we talk about big T's and little T's. So big trauma may be an ACE, childhood, domestic violence, and a little trauma could be a car accident or getting laid off from work. So you have your big T's and your little T's, but then you have your dark T's. And your dark trauma is individuals, in my opinion, this is just my definition because we literally made it up. This is my verbiage, this is fire verbiage, is when an individual experiences trauma at the hands of another human and they should never have had that experience. As humans, we should never experience an individual's psychotic or sociopathic like actions, like on a child and things that happen to children. And I want to even say, some of the things that the victims, so there's victims. The way that we define victims within the fire community is a victim is an individual who's still in the life and she doesn't even know she's a victim. She doesn't connect to it yet. Once she exits out and begins her healing journey, she's literally working on her survivor journey. She's now a survivor of human trafficking. So women who are still in the life, prostitution is literally one of the most common pools a serial killer will glean from. And I've had many survivors who have exited out, who have come across a serial killer that just happened to let them go. which to me is just insanity.
Yeah.
But to me, what a child goes through when they're trafficked, right?
Hmm.
And what a victim may go through if she comes across a serial killer, that is dark trauma. And even some of the things I want to say that a client tell, because I have one survivor who had just really, really dark things were done to her by the customer,
Hmm.
and it's, I mean, in my opinion, it's literally from the pit of hell.
Yeah.
But within the science community, the only way to describe something like that is it's dark. It's very dark, and it's dark trauma.
It's
And
evil.
yes, it's
It's
evil. It's evil
it's
trauma.
Satan himself just,
Yes,
you know, being released in a human body where they feel that they have the right to do whatever sickness they want on another person because
yeah,
one, they paid money for that person, so that person is the property for that amount of time and they have the right, they think,
yes.
to do that. So that's crazy. So we're about here on an hour. So just in wrap up, just share whatever you need to share. You have about 2 minutes.
I've got 2 minutes. Oh, whoever is listening to this, just know that there's hope. There is hope. Whether you're concerned about how dark this world is and you've never experienced human trafficking, but you want to help in some way, please reach out. There's so many different levels, so many different levels to be able to help. You don't have to do what I do. I was built, I've accepted my design and creation from God to do what I do. Something simple is coming to an event that we might have where we're making bracelets. You can donate. You can go and get, like, if you have any type of old makeup or jewelry and you want to donate that so that we can give it out in the outreaches. The other thing that we're needing is kids that have aged out. This is brand new, Sherry. We call it Rising Embers. So individuals who have gone through the first few stages of their healing journey, they're getting ready to go into their own place,
Mhm.
which is both survivors that have been through some type of recovery program as well as our aged out youth. Just need a care package, something for their apartment, something that will give them hope. You can even write cards. If you want to write a card and give it to me or Sherry so that we can give it to somebody, you're welcome to do. There's so many different levels to get
Yeah.
involved, so you don't have to be boots on the ground.
No, and that's great because I often have people ask, well, what can I do? I can't give money, but I can give time or a little gift. And it's nice to know that you're doing that. Rising Embers.
Yes,
I,
Rising Embers of Algernon is what we call it.
I love the name. That's pretty cool. So, Jessica, I just want to thank you so much for all that you do. You do so much, and I can't even grasp all that you do, and with the full time job on top of it. And you definitely are where God wants you to be, and fire is just going to continue to grow. I really feel that 2025 is a year for people to wake up to what's happening around us. And I just want to thank you for your time. And I will link the FIRE website here underneath
Okay.
our podcast so that people can reach out to you if they have any questions. So thanks, Jessica. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I love you.
Love
Thank you for all
you,
you do.
man.